Awesome.
Hi everyone, this is Arthi from Human Chapters. I'll tell you a bit about Human Chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are truly natural storytellers, but I truly do believe each one of us has a worthy story and chapter to share. In acknowledgement to country, we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which now comprises Greater Shepparton. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate the continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. And today we are going to be talking to Josh, and Josh's chapter is Hereditary Spastic Paraparesis, in short, HSP. Go for it, Josh.
Awesome. Like Artie said, I'm Josh, and thank you, Artie, for having me on. Just a bit about me. I'm 22, and I was raised on Yorta Yorta land, but now reside in Wurundjeri country. I love live music. I love going camping. I just got back from a camping trip maybe 2 or 3 hours ago, and I am a really lucky niece. I'm a really lucky uncle. I have 2 nieces that I just love spending a lot of time with. I think my favorite pastime is driving around Victoria and going to a bunch of country towns, bakeries, and just trying out the pasties and that sort of stuff. My brother and I love to do that on our spare time. So yeah.
Awesome.
But no.
Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say we'll have to talk about those country towns and bakeries after the conference.
I've got a list, so I'll send it through, Artie.
Awesome. Go for it.
Yeah. So sorry, I've got the thing here, but yeah. So I think my passions, I guess, is I love telling stories. Most of the time, they're not mine. They're other people's, but I love using my platform or my skills, if you call it, in videography and photography to help tell stories. I guess that's really me in a nutshell, I guess. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Josh. Tell us about HSP and the start of it all. What is it, and how did it
basically, hereditary spastic paraparesis is a really rare disease. It affects one in around 6 to 8 million, and on varying different degrees. I didn't know I had it, although I've been presenting symptoms since I was from my earliest memory, about 10 or 11. I always just shook it off as fatigue, or it's just, I'm just tired or whatever. But basically, my legs, when activating, they just spasm and I lose control of my legs. And sometimes I'll lose footing, I'll fall down, or I'll be able to just hold on. But yeah, I shake a lot in my lower limbs. So HSP is often, it's paraplegia or paraparesis. So paraplegia is on one side, paraparesis is on both. So I have both. And it is a degenerative disease. So it is likely that as I age, it will get worse, which is a thing in itself to come to terms with. But it's been a process of coming to terms for the past 2 or 3 years when I was on my gap year. I was working in my gap year, and then I knelt down to take photos, and then I couldn't feel my legs and I couldn't stand up. And then we had no idea what was going on, and I was rushed out of that venue to the hospital. And then it was about then to when I got a proper diagnosis was about 11 months. And from that 11-month period, I still don't know which genes I have, or which type HSP I have. And that was maybe a year and a bit ago. So we're still in the process of a final full diagnosis, or that apart from just the general diagnosis of HSP. But yeah, is there any clarifications that you need on that? But
so in the 11 months with, your symptoms were leg spasming, fatigue,
yeah,
and then did it sort of increase in strength, any of those symptoms, as you did grow older, or what was that like?
yeah. So I have phases of where I'm bedridden for a couple of days at a time,
Yeah, right.
where walking to the like going downstairs in my place is like that's a task in itself.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it's like, so if I'm having a really full on day and I try and stand up, I have to stand up really slowly, because if I don't, my legs will spasm. I
Yeah.
have on average around 10 to 15 spasms a day. And some of them last for 10 seconds. I have had ones last for almost 5 minutes. They happen when I sleep. And I remember being at an airport with mum and dad. We were flying to Hong Kong, and I fell asleep because I was really tired, and I was spasming, and they didn't want to wake you up. So they just had to let it go. But you could imagine the almost the pain in my parents. Like, it was like, oh, do we stop this? Do we not? Sort of thing. So, but yeah, it's a for me, it's one thing having it, but it's also one thing thinking about what other people are thinking of when I'm having those spasms. It's a confronting thing. Like, I am literally losing control of my legs, and you have to sit there and watch me tell you it's okay, I'm fine. But and then I guess like the normal thing, or what people tell me is like, do I help you, do I not, sort of thing. So but yeah, that's it's like a so over the process of that that 11 months, it was really bad at the start, and then I got some treatment, and then we were able to and then I guess I kind of got a grasp of things. So it's I was able to walk and get my mobility back again, but there were always bad days, and there still are bad days now. And yeah.
And I might have missed this, Josh, but from, say, that initial event when you were taken to the hospital because you couldn't get up, what happened? Like, how long after that did you regain mobility in your legs?
Yeah.
And like, what was that process like in itself?
Yeah. Well, that was crazy in itself, because when they took me to hospital, the doctor brushed it off as a panic attack. So yeah, the ED doctor thought I was just having a panic attack. And then my parents weren't content with that answer. And I was obviously disheartened. So we went specialist after specialist. But while we were doing this, I was like hobbling. And I was at the time working at Notre Dame as a faith and ministry trainee, and they I had to cut down all my hours to like maybe 2 or 3 hours a day after that period of time of trying to regain my mobility. And it was two specialists a week. So it was a physio and an osteo trying to get me up to speed, because before this I was living a very active lifestyle. Like, I would go on hikes, I went to the gym relatively often. I rode my bike, I went for runs, and then all of a sudden I had to stop, which was pretty hard for me, mentally and physically. But I'm sure mum and dad won't mind me telling this, but there was a point in time where my health was so bad that I had to, so they started sleeping in my room, because they bought a one of those reclining beds for an extra $1. So they had to buy a new bed, and then they were like, oh, it's an extra $1 for one of those reclining ones, let's get one for a joke. And then it turned out being one of the most useful things for me. So I ended up sleeping in that bed while I was trying to recover and trying to find comfortable positions and getting a grasp of what that meant from me that day. Because for some reason, it progressively got worse on that day. So I've always had these symptoms, but
Yeah.
never noticeable. But on that day, and no specialist has been able to figure it out, it just got worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just trying to comprehend, or not even.
Yeah, it's a lot, sorry.
No. But like the turn of events and what it must have been like for you from that start point of not being able to feel your legs to get up, to then being rushed to hospital, to then, yeah, for it to be brushed off as a panic attack, to then, like then in regaining or trying to regain that mobility and recovering in a sense from that event. What?
Yeah. It was a lot for sure. And I think the big thing on that is like, I knew what I was feeling, and I knew it wasn't right, and I knew I shouldn't be feeling those things, and I knew my legs shouldn't be doing that, and I knew I should be able to feel my hands and all that sort of stuff. But as soon as that doctor, it's just a panic attack. The first just doubt just crept into my head, and it was like, is this all in my head? Am I making all of this up? So I guess like, and part of this diagnosis period has been so difficult because I still think that there's like little bits and like little like like periods of time will slip into my head where it's like, is this all in my head? Am I putting this on?
Yeah.
Even though I'm not, I think. But yeah, so like that moment was really almost like hurtful and kind of made me second guess a lot of things moving forward from then. And a lot more, I guess, whenever I am given a firm diagnosis, I will still be like, are you sure? Like it's almost never finite for me, but I was starting to come to terms with that, for better or for worse. So
yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that part of it. I have two questions. One is, what do those spasms feel like in your body?
yeah.
And the second question is, what type of specialists did you have to visit to
Of course.
get the diagnosis?
Yeah. So I'll get you to, if you can just tense your legs like
Okay.
really, really tight. And whoever's watching, if you can tense your legs really, really tight and then let go.
Yeah.
Imagine that happening 30 seconds, 30 times a second.
Oh.
So,
Oh
so, and then that happens again for sometimes for 10 seconds, sometimes for 4.5 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it gets worse when I'm tired or fatigued and stuff. And which is quite often because I'm very hard-headed and I push my body a lot. But yeah, so that's I guess that's how it feels. And so, what was your last question?
So the next one is, what type of specialists did you have to visit? Yeah.
So it started off with we went to a neurologist first, and then we went to a neurosurgeon who then passed us on to a neurologist, and then in conjunction with my neurologist, I also have a pain specialist. That we try and manage the pain levels and stuff over periods of time. Those are the main ones. And then your physios and stuff as well. But the neurologists, I'm super lucky to be living in Heidelberg with the Austin down the road, and the Austin's like specializes in the rare neurological diseases. So the main team that I'm currently I guess working with is based in the Austin, and the process of getting that ball rolling, even to find out which SPG type I have, is 6 months. So from the time I give my blood to the time I may get results, because from my understanding there's 40 types of HSP, but they can only test for 6.
Oh.
So if I don't have any of those 6 SPG genes, I still have HSP, but they don't know which one I have, which
Wow.
complicates things.
And is
Yeah,
it just because the other ones haven't been specifically discovered and are in the research process?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's because I guess the pool to choose from, to find the genetic testing from, is so small
yeah,
that, and certain types of HSP are more common than others.
sure.
So yeah, if I do have one of the more rarer ones, I might, or a combination of a bunch of them,
Yeah,
I may only find out of 2 or 3 at this point in time. But the
sure.
more people get tested,
Yeah,
the more likely I will get a like another SPG or a couple more. Yeah, but
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. So then, so we've talked about the assessment and diagnosis part of your chapter. What does treatment look like? Yeah.
Relatively non-existent.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so it is so for HSP itself, um, there is no cure.
oh, yeah,
Um, I have basically just have to accept that my legs mobility will deteriorate as I grow older, unless they find a cure.
yeah,
Um, but for, I guess, pain management wise, I undergo a ketamine infusion once every 7 to 10 months, which is when I go into hospital and I go in. I get what are they? I get it.
I,
That yeah, it's basically an IV drip. I keep forgetting what they're called. But my sister, who's a health professional, will be like,
yeah,
she's screaming at the screen. But yeah, so I get one of those, and over for a whole 7 day period, I get ketamine dripped into my system, which is meant to reset your pain thresholds, and I get a pretty high dose in comparison
yeah,
to yeah, a lot of people. But that's, yeah, the Metro Pain specialists that which is the team that I work with, are very like they've worked with like, I guess, pain similar, that I am the first HSP patient they have worked with. But oh, that's, yeah. So which is good for the people who will go down this road, because there
yeah,
are other ways. Like, I think other people do cortisone injections, but they don't last as long.
yeah.
And the more you do them, you can only do cortisone injections so much.
Yes.
So yeah.
And you said this 7 day period is every
Yeah.
six to
So I am overdue for my first one.
yeah,
That's because I wanted to finish all of my uni assessments. But yeah, usually meant to be between 7 to 10 months, depending
okay,
on how I feel.
sure.
Um, the longer I go away from that date, the more and more bedridden I get.
Yeah, yeah,
Because so what we found for me is it's been like a compound thing. So the more fatigued and the more stressed and the more tired I am, the
yeah,
more spasms and the more they hurt I
yeah.
have. The more spasm I have, the more they hurt. Yeah,
Yeah, that sort of cyclical effect of, but in the negative.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
That okay. So then do you do anything for yourself that you found, like anecdotally,
yeah,
things that are helpful or some, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I am super lucky to be living in a share house with split system air conditioning.
Yeah.
Because sometimes my nerves would just play up and then again compound. So like when it's really hot, my nerves would just go crazy, and then my legs will just want to kick. Um, and then but when it's too cold, I seize up and my muscles get really stiff. So it's always a balance. I'm always
Yeah.
reaching for the thermostat. um, I like it took me a while to get back to it, but relative like off like exercise, like whenever I can. So I try and go for walks as often as I can, and I'll try and switch it up and go for runs. But that's more of pleasing my mental state than it is my body.
Yeah.
Because that's often a balance and a catch-22 in itself. Like I need that satisfaction mentally because I miss those activities, but then I also know that if I do this, I might be not walking the next day,
Yeah.
which is a tightrope for sure. So yeah.
Okay. So temperature control, exercise. Speaking of your activity transition,
Yeah.
let's talk about like that component of it. How have you processed and digested this diagnosis?
At the start, not very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went from what like being as independent as humanly possible from a young age, and coming from an Asian family. My mother has the biggest loving heart, but
Yeah.
wants to do everything for me. Um, so when I was young, I was like, no, I've got this. I'll do this. I'll do this on my own. Like I, I would ride my bike to the other side of town in Shep. Like I refused to let mum drive me to certain places. Like I'd always ride my bike. I wanted to do everything on my own accord.
Yeah.
So going from that mentality to having my mum having to put my socks on on certain days
Yeah.
was, yeah, a bit debilitating. Like, and I like, there was a point in time when, so it was maybe 3 or 4 months after I just had that episode in 2018. So when I had to go to hospital, and my best mate wanted to come and take me for kebabs because I wasn't doing so well, and he had to put my socks on.
Yeah.
And for me, that really, really stung. That was like a dagger in the heart.
Yeah.
But it's gone from that and slowly gaining my mobility and actually coming to terms with it's okay for other people to help me and do things for me. And it doesn't change like how they see me or who I am because they're helping me out. I'm still struggling with that. To this day, my family will be the first people to tell you that I am very hard-headed and I will push my luck to everything. But I think it's just a balance. Yeah.
So, Josh, when you like there are significant transitions and the long-term implication of these transitions, how did you seek help for yourself, sort of even in that mental space, family being there, but were there other things you did that you do currently, and what does it like you're stripped of your independence and that debilitating feeling, and with it, again, I comes all of those sort of thoughts and what's going to happen next. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. And similarly to the physical side of things, at the start, not very well.
Yeah.
I think I reclused. I didn't want, I felt like I was a burden on everyone that I was around, even strangers.
Yeah.
So I limited my time outside. It affected my relationship with my family, relationship with my mates, relationship with anybody and everybody. I kind of just like, yeah, I treated other people differently because I didn't want to be treated differently.
Yeah.
And I guess it was super hard at the start, but I thankfully was in touch with a psychologist already at the time. So that was a huge part of the process of healing, was actually talking to her and getting it across to myself that it's okay not to be okay and it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
I grew up of faith, and it was very easy for me for this period of a period of time in my life to turn away from that, to be like, why me? Why is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Like, out of all people, why me? And I think part of asking for help is also opening that part of my heart again and kind of like letting go of things like that. Like, that, yeah, I think that was a huge part, like, of it, like asking those questions, but also like sitting there and like, you know what, you don't need the answers for everything. You just got to take it a day at a time and just be. I think that's one thing. It's just being. And a word that I used to hate but now have grown to love is compromise.
Yeah.
Because I used to think that compromise was a bad thing. Like I couldn't do exactly what I wanted to do, so I had to compromise.
Yeah.
And that sucked because I wanted to do exactly that. But then the more I got out there, I used to like to going hiking, but I realized I couldn't go hiking for as long as I did before. So I just started camping more, and I still get to see what I wanted to see, but in a different way. And that's a compromise, but it's a compromise I've grown to love. So I think loving compromises is a thing that has helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also appears to be a part of that acceptance as well with the compromise, you know, to a certain extent. It is that acceptance that, yeah, it needs to be different. And so that's where it's headed. Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how, yes, you're processing. And do you find that it's gotten, so since 2018, we are in 2021, what has that particular period brought about in terms of, is it some days will be hard, some days will be easy-ish, but has it been better in terms of, okay, this is what it feels like, this is what needs to happen, and this is where we're going? How, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like I even though with everything going on now, especially like post-pandemic and then with all the health stuff, like I'm still in a better mental state now than I was 3 years ago. And I can say that with confidence. It's taken a long while to get here, but I can definitely say that. Part of it has been being more open to talk to people, and instead of just saying, I'm okay, don't worry about my legs, it's actually having that dialogue and that conversation. I'm very lucky to be in an industry and I guess a role with my work that so I work for a non-for-profit Catholic organization.
Yeah.
And I do the video production, and I'm part of the creative team there as well. So I can work remotely. I can work on my own hours.
Yeah.
And I could, because some days that I'll wake up in the morning and can't walk, and so I can't go downstairs and I can't edit. So I will, and that's fine with my boss, and he's so understanding, and I have a good relationship with him outside of work too, which is really good. So on those days, I'll just come down at night and then fill out my hours that I need to do in the week. So it's super flexible, and it's kind of what I need with my health. But yeah.
Absolutely. And that was going to be my next question for you, was your diagnosis in relation to your work and what that been like in terms of an adjustment, in terms of flexibility, or have you had to change positions, or
so well, I work in the video production industry. Like that's how we first met. Doing that job with Jamie. But I once was like, I did everything. So I did the filming, the editing, the shooting, the sound, everything. Like I was always running around like crazy. But now, because of like my health, I haven't been able to shoot as much as I used to. Like, so actually be on site filming. I've had to take on different roles in that sense. So a lot more behind the scenes work, or if I am doing those sorts of jobs, I have to wear different, I use different rigs and and tools to make it easy for me to do that job. It's like for that job that I did with Jamie, I had that big weird thing that hangs my camera in front of me to save my legs and my back. It's just things like that. So I've had to make accommodations,
Yes.
but it has not stopped me. But it has made uni and that sort of stuff a bit difficult as well, because when the pandemic wasn't on, there were days I couldn't get to campus.
Yeah.
So in a sense, online learning helped and benefited me, because I could just do everything from home or in bed when I wasn't having good days. So, yeah.
That's amazing to hear, with how it's worked for you, and it's worked well in that you were supported. It's the workplace itself is flexible, and you're still able to meet your hours or whatever, like to the capacity, when and where you can.
Yeah, and I'm like, again, like again, lucky to be in the workplace that I'm in, because like even if there were days that like I've got deadlines due, but I can't move around, all I got to do is text Father Rob or text Alyssa and just be like, look, today's not a good day, and they'll be the first people to say, that's fine, rest. Like, and I couldn't imagine myself getting that lenience in other industries or other positions. Like if I was a tradie or something, like I don't think I'd be able to keep up with working in that field, in my health. So I'm very, 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 very lucky to be in the industry that I'm in.
Yeah. And actually, you've brought about such a good point in that sort of in this particular organization, there are plenty of accommodations and supports available. And if there are any employers that are engaging with this particular conversation, is there something you'd like to tell them to be considering in their strategy for their employers?
Yeah, I think the big thing is for me, when if I go into like the workforce in advertising, let's say, like the big thing is I'm scared that people are going to be that aren't going to hire me because of my disability.
Yeah.
And I'm scared that it's going to be like, this guy's perfect for the job, but this is a limiting factor because he can't get into the office, or so forth and so on. So I think just having that conversation with people with disabilities, physical or not, like ones that present outside as well as inside, I think just having that discussion and being accommodating, and yeah, I guess reassuring is another thing too, because even though that option has been available from day one for me in my workplace, I am still reluctant to take it. I'm still reluctant to be like, sorry, I can't work today. But I think being like reassuring, but even just, and also being able to just be like, hey, like, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Can we accommodate? Like, is your workload okay? Like, how's your health been? Like, yeah, just things like that. But again, like, it's often the first hurdle for me is what other people think.
Yes.
So it's like, in this case, what employers would think of me.
Yeah.
So I guess trying to eliminate that barrier from the get-go would be good.
Yeah. Okay. So that sort of external perception.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like that starts with dialogue at the end of the day. So
Yes, absolutely. The next thing I wanted to, or the next couple of things I wanted to touch on, which I'm taking you back, but you mentioned faith. And
yeah.
during the point of diagnosis or that period after it, you were sort of, you were taken out of it for a period of time. How were you drawn back to your faith and your belief and your journey?
I think that was, it wasn't a pinpoint moment. It was kind of like it was definitely it happened over time, and it was interactions with other people of faith. the one that stands out clearly is so working at Notre Dame. I also was a parishioner at St. Brendan's, and there was this lovely lady who noticed that I wasn't at work, and then approached my mum and my sister and checked in on me, and then they told her. And a couple of months later, I saw her, and I saw her crying, and she comes up to me, she hugs me. It's like, I've been praying for you. You're so strong, and I've been praying for you. And that interaction was kind of one of those things that I'm like, okay, my heart at this point in time has frozen over, but other people's haven't.
Yeah.
Like their hearts are still hopeful. And I think, and being in that position was like striking at first. Like I was like, oh, like that's a bit like, oh, I think I had my guard up at the start. But then the more I thought about it and the more I removed my hurt, I was able to be like, that's actually so special. And then again, growing up in a family of faith, mum and dad were always praying. I get my close friend, who's also my boss now, was always praying, and he was always open to have that conversation with me. So I think it was always just other people's support, and they weren't saying like, you should pray again, or you should, find your faith again. It was always like they were doing little things that weren't necessarily verbal. But it was kind of like it's slowly, like it was what I needed to find my way back. Is that okay? Yeah, I get a bit shaky talking about that period of time. Yeah, because I guess like even just my faith in general, like it's one of those things, especially for a guy my age and growing up in a country town, and as a Catholic, we have become the minority, and so I get a bit guarded about it, but it's definitely something that I'm proud of, and I want to talk about more. So, yeah.
No, that's wonderful. And Josh, you mentioned that the people weren't telling you in spoken language to pray or to be doing that, but they did little things. What were those little things that had an impact?
Just from the simplest thing of like, they would just like the extended hugs, or they'd hold my hand when they'd tell me something, or when I'd say that I was having a bad day, but I'm on my feet and that's okay. They would just have like, I guess like they'd just have a look that you would kind of just be like, I'm thinking of you, or I'm praying for you, or you're like, yeah. And that goes to people of non-secular, who are secular, like that. When I would just tell them of my story, they'd just be like their heart goes out to me, like sort of thing. And that kind of like, I hate the attention being on me, but I can't help but sit there and be like, you know what, that's something to be grateful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
With us. My other question was about culture. So growing up, what are the some of the beliefs and values and stuff that you've grown up with, and did any of them have a friction when you were diagnosed to that sort of processing and acceptance?
This one's a huge one. Like this is going to unpack a kind of can of worms, but again, growing up as a Filipino, first generation Australian, and then also having this in the mix. Growing up in a country town as a first generation Australian and throwing this in the mix is a melting pot for interesting reactions, I guess. But I think the big thing culturally was Filipinos. We are incredibly humble people as a culture, but we're also very quick to hide the impurities of ourselves, and we put on when you go to the Philippines, and you will see everybody that goes to church and they're like immaculate clothes, right? But as soon But then if you run into them on the side of the street, they're just in like, it's literally their Sunday best is what they're wearing. And AKA that's the only nice pair of clothes they have. But so it's always for, I guess, like, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but a good image was always preferred in our culture.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was always like, I always hid my struggles. So not only health-wise, but I have struggled with my mental health. And it's like, for a large period of my life. And that wasn't talked about in my culture. That wasn't spoken about even at home for a while. Like, I'm so lucky that my brother was so supportive, and he had his own journey with it all. And then my sister had her own journey with it all. And my parents are incredibly understanding. And though it was a bit tough at the start, like they're the first people to ask if we're okay now, and they're so understanding. And but yeah, that was always a struggle. Talking about what isn't good in your life. And then so when you drop a whole, oh yeah, maybe in 20 years time, my mobility won't be the same. I might have a cane, I might be in a wheelchair or a walking frame. And then wearing that and other people seeing that was a struggle for me, because it's like, it's a pride thing at the end of the day. It's like, these people, like, yeah, I'm trying to coach that out of myself, like the whole, what other people see me and perceive me as. And I think that's innate to that, the cultural side of things. But my culture's also taught me to be resilient. And like, knock me down and I will get up, sort of thing. Like, and I think that's the big thing. Like, everything, cultures always teach, and you always learn from what your parents do, whether you take those on or you learn from them. So I think that's a big thing that I'm still coming to terms with. And I hope that me speaking about this and just even using like a dialogue with other people and on small level can open up that conversation in cultures when it comes to mental health and physical disabilities, that we are literally the exact same as you, and there's nothing that really changes that. But yeah,
exactly. And I resonate with so much of what you've talked about within the Filipino culture, but coming from Indian roots, but growing up in born and growing up in Kenya, just very similar. Mental health is considered a stigma. Disability is considered taboo. And to be able to talk about these topics openly and honestly and in quite a raw manner is such a beautiful thing, because no one is immune to anything. That's the thing. We are all a human race. So no one's immune to it, no matter what the facade may appear to be. No, that's beautiful. So that's culture. Now I wanted to ask about what it was like for your family when
and like I said, like Filipinos in general put on a facade, and mum and dad weren't different. I think mum was like, mum wears her heart on her sleeve, so she showed it more. And I think the phrase that breaks my heart is, if I could take this away from you and I have it instead, I'll do it in a heartbeat. And mum always says that, dad always says that. But again, my parents are I'm very lucky to have my parents, because they're my biggest supporters. Like, they're the first people that I will call if I'm not doing too well, or they're the first people who will drive 2 hours down to Melbourne for an appointment with me, even though it's literally a 10-minute put ECGs on you and then send you away. They'll still drive down and they'll check in on me, and they're always by my side. And I'm lucky that they've received it that way, because I know some people on this journey haven't been as lucky.
Yeah, that's gosh, it would be so, yeah, to do anything for your loved ones, right? And
Yeah,
like it would be a
exactly.
vice versa kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is when I look into my mum's eyes and she tells me that, I know she means every single
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and yeah, I definitely like, I am so lucky to have them as parents, because I was ready to give up on finding a diagnosis months ago,
Wow.
but they were not content with that unknown,
Yes.
for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And they knew that, like, even though I was at a point where it was just like, I didn't think it was going to make a difference to whether I knew or not, they knew that at the end of the day, it's peace of mind. Um, and yeah, I'm so lucky that they championed me on, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, that's so wonderful. And the other thing I wanted to ask now, feel free to decline this question. I would totally understand if that's the case. But talking about the future and that sort of,
Mhm.
you've mentioned it's a degenerative condition and what the trajectory is likely to be. How are you holding space for that? And what's that like for you?
Yeah. I think uh, there are days where I'm extremely hopeful, and I'll be like, it doesn't matter. Like, I am, again, as stubborn as all hell. So I will be walking on, like, I will always be on my feet, whether that is for 10 seconds of the day or the whole day itself. Like, I'll always be on my feet. But there are days where it is doom and gloom. And it is one of those things that's like, I probably won't be able to drive around Australia like I wanted to, in the way I wanted to. Like, I will probably have to be supported. I'll probably have to do it with my partner, which is not a bad thing. But there will probably be a wheelchair in the back seat, or there will be a walking frame in the back seat. Like, we don't know what that looks like. My travels overseas will always look different. I'll always need to make special accommodations. Like, so it is super daunting.
Yeah.
And I guess there are times where I just look at it and just be like, well, like, how do we move on from this?
Yeah.
But then most of the time I'm able, like, I'll take it as okay, let's just play it by ear, and let's take one step at a time. And these are the goals that I have in my head that I want to tick off. But if I don't tick them off the way that I think I am, I know I'll tick them off that one way or another.
Yeah.
So I think being stubborn, as much as I've said it as in this interview, is paying off for me sometimes, because I won't let it stop me. Yeah, for sure.
Good on you. And that's it's such an, like, it's so inspiring to hear that, and going that, yes, you've said you're hard-headed, you're stubborn, but in that same context, you've learned to love compromise. And in that same, like, you can, just listening to you speak about your journey gives me goosebumps, but inspires me at the same time to go, this is what we should be doing, open dialogues. And how do we accommodate for people and make them feel like, yes, they're wanted and they're worth it, and all of that that goes with being human, no matter what.
Of course. Yeah. And I think, the big thing that I've had to teach myself is, it was very easy for me to show compassion to other people.
Yeah.
And growing up, like, we always, like, my dad and I did soup kitchens. It was always, social justice was a big part of my life. And I guess I could show compassion really easily to other people, but when it came to turn the mirror around and show compassion to myself, I couldn't. So I think being compassionate to yourself when you need it is so important. And it's something that I've had to, like, learn and force myself to do sometimes, but it's so necessary with a disability or without a disability.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Josh, what does compassion look like for you when you are actively showing it to yourself?
Not beating myself up when I can't do what I want to do.
Yeah.
There was this the moment that sticks out in my head was so my parents own a food truck in Shep called Nana Mars,
Yeah.
and I was working an event with them, and then my legs just gave way, and then I was like, worst case scenario started running through my head. It's like, I've brought shame to the food truck. Mum and dad are going to be so like disappointed. Da, 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 da. The list goes on. But then Greg Brazel, who owns the Terminus, he was in line, and the first person who ran into the food truck was him.
Aww.
And he wanted to throw me over his shoulders and run me to the medics. And I think compassion looks like that. It's like stopping at a dime and being like, no, you are, whatever's in your head, it doesn't matter. You deserve care.
Yes.
And you're okay. Like, I think that's like, yeah, because I can get caught up in the logistics of what the next 10 years is going to look like, and I can get bogged down on that. But right now I'm okay. And that's all I can ask, I guess. So I guess that's compassion, if that makes sense.
And that's the thing, right? We think about the future, and we think about that sort of long term, but that's a lot of the times us living in hope and faith that that's going to happen. It's a beautiful thing, but we also know the moment itself is extremely important, and being mindful mindful of it.
Yeah, my little nieces are teaching me that, like, of being present and just enjoying the moment for what it is. And yeah, they're absolute champions. So I'm lucky to have them in my life as well. So yeah,
that is beautiful. Before we do the wrap up, and I would love to talk about Nana Mars and what that food truck is. Are there any questions that you would have wished I would have asked that I haven't even thought about, or something we haven't touched on?
No, I don't think so. I think, like, it's, for me, this is the first time I'm actually fully publicly talking about my diagnosis. For a lot of people, they've known I've been in and out of hospital. They know I've gotten sick. They know I have, my mobility sometimes isn't affected too well. But so even just having the opportunity to have this conversation is the biggest question I could have gotten, I guess. I guess thank you for the opportunity, and thanks to my partner Sarah for convincing me to do this. So no, it's good.
Thank you, Sarah, and no, thank you to you. It's been an absolute honor listening to what your journey has been in this condition, because you can always read up on it, search it somewhere, you get the information, but that firsthand experience and having the honor to talk to someone about it is very, very special. So thank you.
You're too kind, Artie. Thank you.
No, not at all. It really
you're giving me too much credit.
No, oh my goodness. No, it's such an inspiration, honestly, listening to what you have been through, are going through, and what that's like for you. Tell us a bit about Nana Mars.
Nana Mars is my mum and dad's food truck. Basically, mum has worked in hospo for a large part of her life, and when my first niece was born, Stella, mum took a break from it all, and then I think dad always had a dream of mum running her own shop, and then so the food truck idea was born. And when we first brought the food truck home, the caravan home from Bendigo, it was a shell of what it is now. But mum just had the biggest smile on her face, and she recounted that when her mum, her adopted mum raised her and her sister, she raised them by selling a street food at markets in the Philippines.
Oh,
And mum just had the biggest smile on her face selling, and she's like, and now I can do this with my kids and my grandkids, like, so hence the name Nana Mas was born. So Nana Mas is after my mum's grandma, mum Marcelina, so Mama Mas, Nana Mas. And it's we joke around, as we say, it's an extension of our home.
yes.
Because whenever our friends come over, mum, all mum wants to do is cook for them. So my friends and my sister's friends and my brother's friends have been eating this food before it was a food truck.
Yes.
And the joke was always, you guys should start a restaurant and that sort of stuff. And then so we've done that, and the community of Shepparton have just opened their hearts to us and have just welcomed us. And yeah, we couldn't have started the food truck in a better place, because the community just rallies around you, which is awesome. And I like mum and dad's recipe. Well, the chicken recipe is older than me, and I was eating before I went vegetarian. I was eating it for all my life, so that's why I look the way I look.
Oh.
But mum was really like, it's like, oh, what if Shepparton doesn't like it, or what if other people don't like it? And I'm so glad that mum's doubts were proven wrong. And yeah,
that is amazing. What an incredible story. I think I'll have to talk to them and say, let's talk on Human Chapters.
No, absolutely. I think they've got their own story to tell, and I'm very lucky to be a part of that family. And I've learned, again, like I've learned a lot from my mum and dad, and I wouldn't be here in I guess as much hope as I hold without them and without my sister and my brother. So yeah.
Absolutely. That is so wonderful, Josh. Let's do a wrap-up question, which is 3 to 5 key takeaways you would like for anyone engaging with this conversation.
Yeah, I think compassion.
Yeah.
Like, show yourself compassion and show others compassion. Yeah. If you're the type of person to give your all to other people, you deserve that too. Yeah. I think compromise not being a bad thing.
Yes.
Is huge. And not having no reservations, like, because for me, I don't know how the things that I do now will look in 10 years time, if that makes sense. Like, if I was to travel in 10 years time, it won't be the same as how I travel now. Yeah. So live that up for what it is now and cherish those moments. I think the big thing is always like, just tell people that you love them, because things like change and situations change. And I've lost count. Is that 3, 4?
Yeah,
is that 5?
Totally.
Okay.
No, that's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so very much, Josh. We've covered, I think, a wonderful amount of information through your chapter, and so hopefully we'll get some awareness for HSP out there as well. Yeah,
absolutely. No, and that's all it is. Like, at the end of the day, like, the more people know about it, the easier it is for people that have it to feel like it's okay. Yes. When they are outside in the world and they have a spasm, that they're not thinking they're like, like what the thoughts that were running through my head and
Yeah.
still run through my head. I think that's the only thing that I could ask for, really. So thank you for this platform again and this opportunity to hopefully one step closer to that goal. So thank you.
No, not at all. My absolute pleasure. And I just want to tell the people that will be either watching this chapter on Facebook or listening to it on podcast, please feel free to connect to share it with people who may enjoy listening to it or connect with it to some respect. We've talked a lot more about your life experience in it, so there'll be different points that people might take away. So thanks in advance for anyone else that's listening or watching, and thank you very much, Josh, for taking the time out.
Thank you so much, Hardy. Have a good one.
You too.